Hello, I am Sydney,
And I'm Melanie.
and this is Drawntaneous. For this episode, we won't actually be rolling up a category because we're going to be tackling a specific subject, which is Slime Rancher.
I was gonna say that was a very hard, aggressive intro. We're tackling a subject. We just really want to talk about Slime Rancher because we've both been playing it a lot the past couple of weeks.
Which is really hard because we only have one PC.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't even want to know how many collective hours we've logged in just the past 2 weeks alone. But yeah, so Slime Rancher, we got it recently because it was free.
On Epic Games.
Yep. So, Sydney,
Yes.
what is your impression of Slime Rancher?
Well, it is gayer than I expected it to be in the best way possible. And that really took me by surprise. And, I liked it because I like Harvest Moon and, games like it. But now I love it even more just because, it's about lesbians.
Why don't we talk a little bit about the gameplay aspect, in case people have been living under a rock and have no idea what Slime Rancher is. And then why don't we go into a little more about the representation that we found snuck into the game.
Yeah, so Slime Rancher is kind of what it sounds like. You ranch slimes. You are thousands of light years away from Earth, on a place called the Far Far Range, where these creatures, these slimes, spawn, and their shits, their plorts, are valuable. So there are ranchers who raise them and sell the plorts, and yeah, it's a business.
I was gonna say, is it ever described, what they use the plorts for?
Not if they did, I wasn't paying attention.
Same though, same.
But the plorts are valuable, but you can't get the slimes to live off planet. So people have to be on the planet to do it. You play Beatrix LeBeau. It's a first-person game, so you don't really get to see her outside of, when you go into your house and when you first open the game.
Yeah, the main menu, you get your first shot of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you go around, you collect slimes, you raise slimes, you steal their shit, you sell their shit.
And we mean that
to make
literally.
Money. You get upgrades, you have, this little vacuum gun thing, and it gives different upgrades. You get a jetpack, which is fun, and gosh, what does it remind me of, this jetpack and first-person shooter?
Portal?
I guess? I almost want to say it's more Halo. Because
I wouldn't
You never
know.
played Halo, but I recall the floatiness of the jumps and the jetpack. Definitely kind of harkens back to Halo, I think. This game is very different from Halo in the fact that you are just trying to make money. There is a plot, though, and that comes in the form of these emails that you get. And there are a variety of characters who send you emails. Some of them are just NPCs that you interact with in order to do quests for, and they give you money and items that maybe are hard to find or hard to get. Some of these characters will essentially hire you, I guess, to do work for them, and then you get more upgrades. You get more farmland, which is very helpful for later slimes who just want to destroy everything. But more specifically, Sydney, you really appreciated the queer representation. Now, I have a question.
Yes.
Does the game ever concretely say what Casey's gender is? I don't think it does.
It doesn't. I've been assuming that it's a woman due to, well, spoilers, they reveal her voice at the end because she sings the credit song. And I'm fairly sure that at the very least she's femme.
Mm-hmm. Well, Casey is also a very gender-neutral name these days. I think it used to be quite a masculine name back in the day. At least that specific spelling of Casey. But regardless, it's very gender-neutral sounding.
Yeah.
So you could kind of assume anything since they don't give an actual confirmed gender, which is fine.
Yeah. But through these emails that your friend Casey sends you, you find out about their past together, that they were really close friends, and then you even find out that they were dating, but their dreams took them in different directions, so they ended it.
Yeah, they were long distance dating.
Yeah, and we are experienced in that.
Yeah, you and I
Majority
dated long distance
yeah.
for the majority of a relationship.
Yeah, and the majority of our friendship, even before we were dating, was online. So I definitely related to the theme of being far away. But fortunately for us, it worked out.
It did.
Whereas with Beatrix and Casey, they ended things on a mutual note. But they still are fond of each other.
It was definitely the things they wanted to get out of life were too different, and that they just couldn't make it work while following their dreams. So rather than sacrifice what's true for them, sacrifice their dreams, their ambitions, what really makes them happy, they decided that it was best to just remain friends, but no longer be in a relationship. And it's very bittersweet. The emails definitely talk about, mostly, they're all from Casey's perspective. It is
mostly
a conversation.
Reminiscing.
Yeah, it's a conversation between the two characters. You never hear Beatrix's side of it. You only ever see Casey's responses. But it's a lot of reminiscing, talking about, hey, this is kind of when I first really realized I was in love with you. Not explicitly in those words, but you can get the feeling that there is a missed connection. There's a lot of regret on Casey's part, where they wish that they had said something sooner and that maybe things would be different, because they really miss each other. And it's a really bittersweet, touching story. It's not a happy ending necessarily, but I think it's a really good ending and good story regardless. It's not tragic, which a lot of queer stories we get tend to be tragic in some way. Either there's illness, there's death, there's all sorts of kinds of abuse. So it's really nice just to see this simple but really poignant story play out through text in this game.
Especially because, the last letter you get, which ends the game, well, it doesn't end the game, but it ends the story, where Casey's like, hey, she's a musician, she's like, I'm going on my first tour today, and I hope you will be able to see me someday because I'll be singing for you. And then it plays one of her songs and she sings about being thousands of light years
Yeah, it
apart.
essentially is Casey's feelings about when Beatrix hopped on the space ship thing. I know there's a specific term for it. The people mover to a far, far off planet
to live in the wilderness and pick up shit.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it was very nice. So how is this representation different from recent representation? Because I know you have a lot of feelings about certain intellectual properties.
Now I'm gonna fucking talk about it. So, anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of the new Voltron show, Voltron Legendary Defender, which recently came to a close this past year. Unfortunately, they caved to popular demands based on a character who died. Now, I normally am very much like, oh, why does the queer character always have to die? Pretty much, spoilers, one of the main characters, Shiro, is gay. And his former fiancée, who broke up with him before he went away and got captured by aliens, he died in a battle protecting Earth. And the fans raised a big stink about it. And in this case...
Because it's the bury your gays trope.
It is the bury your gays trope, and I feel that, but a lot of characters have died up to that point. So, I didn't 100% buy it. It's not like anyone was invincible. A lot of major characters died.
And especially since there was another queer representation romance that they could have gone with.
Yeah, that... I won't get into it just because I have many feelings. I'll go on forever. But they had an option to build a relationship with characters that already had excellent chemistry And instead of doing that, they caved to what we call antis, people who aggressively are against content in a show, or in this case, a ship, a pairing, and set up Shiro with a character who only his last name is Curtis. That's all we know about him. He has no personality, nothing interesting about him.
Basically a cardboard cutout that they just...
Well, yeah, because when they leaked the images of the epilogue, it was a different dude, and Curtis is in the background, and then they changed it, and it's just super frustrating because it's like, you've been building seasons and seasons, and you caved into A, shitty fans, and B, investors who I'm real fucking sick of. Investors getting a say in creative endeavors when they don't know shit about it, because it's like, man, shut up and make your money. Like, leave it alone. Leave it alone. And of course there's the Harry Potter thing, where J.K. Rowling came out again with like, hey, Dumbledore and Grindelwald had a passionate relationship, but it doesn't come up because we don't want to talk about sex in the movie. I'm like, as an ace person, being gay does not revolve around sex, and to insinuate that is just demonizing us as these deviant creatures. Which, not that there's anything wrong with being deviant, but in the public eye, queer people are seen as hypersexual, and thus inappropriate for children.
Well, it's also frustrating because it's been a long time since I followed Harry Potter in any capacity.
Well, yeah, because kind of isn't for people like us.
No, but it seems like with that franchise, it's a lot of, oh, this happened off camera. So there's no...
But all the straight stuff, you get, like, details about Ron and Hermione making out behind curtains.
Wasn't there, like, in one of the movies, wasn't there a blatant sexual scene between Ron and Hermione?
No, between Harry and Hermione that Ron was imagining.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in 3D, and that was painful.
Yeah, that was not fun.
So, like, that's okay. Well, this is a whole nother topic where we don't need to get into, but representation isn't representation if it isn't shown. Like, you can't say, oh, it happened off screen. Well, it didn't then. There's no...
And, like, it's never mentioned. Like, never once does Dumbledore say, hey, I made a horrible mistake because I was in love with Grindelwald and let him get away with literal murder. And you shouldn't, like, you should be wary of that. It was just... Also, that, like, the only, like, canon queer characters are both kind of shitty. Like, Dumbledore's, obviously, like, everyone talks about, like, how he was kind of a bad guardian and whatnot. And then Grindelwald's a villain, so it's like, great. The only people who are us are child abusers and bad.
Right.
It's exhausting.
Well, fortunately, we are getting a lot more representation. Maybe not in big media, but definitely in smaller press and in indie studios.
Thank God.
What do you want, rather than what could they do better, but what would you like to see in representation? Because clearly we have a lot of examples of how it's been done poorly and how it's been very unsatisfactory, because it seems like they are stories being told by people who aren't queer. So either is the answer queer people making more content, or is it straight people figuring out how to represent us in a respectful way?
Well, I definitely say it's both. Like, obviously, hire more queer people. The more people you have, the more variety in stories and experiences you'll get. And when you write queer characters, don't have just one. It's like the same problem with women and people of color. If you only have one character, then, like, they have to represent everything that's good in that character. You can't make them flawed.
And that's actually something that came up in the future of LGBT media that Limerence did. That panel. Saw. At Emerald City Comic Con. Surprise! Is another Emerald City Comic Con topic. But Limerence Press is part of Oni Press, and they do a lot of queer media and a lot of, would you say a lot of adult queer media?
I would say mature queer media.
Yeah, but they were talking about how, like, these are all queer creators that were on this panel, and they were saying that in the early days of their careers, when they made a queer character in a story, they felt like this character had to be perfect, had to be a role model. But when you put more queer characters into... And it doesn't have to be, like, queerness doesn't have to be their defining characteristic. In fact, it shouldn't be their defining characteristic.
Don't make Jack from Will and Grace. I hate him.
I've never watched Will and Grace, but I assume it's bad.
He is the exact stereotype you expect.
Oh, boy. Yeah, like, you don't need to do that. And a word or a phrase they really enjoy to use and that they really appreciate in media is incidental queerness, where it's like it's so offhanded and normalized that it's like it doesn't even matter. Like somebody's just some woman's offhandedly saying like, "Oh yeah, me and the missus are gonna go home tonight and get dinner," and that's it.
That's all you need to do.
That's all you need to know. Or to like represent a trans person, it's like, oh, you see them, or they say, hey, you know, I've been in this binder for 8 hours. I'm going to take this off and rest a little bit, guys. And that's it. Like,
it's not a spectacle.
It's just a concrete detail of, yes, this person identifies in this way, and the people it matters to will catch that and will appreciate that representation. But they talked about specifically being sure that when you represent some identity, you're representing it with intent, that you are focusing on the details. You're not trying to blanket represent everybody, because then you don't convey it well enough. You have to write about a specific experience. So for instance, the trans person taking off their binder, because as a person who's crossplayed and worn binders, those are very difficult to wear. Just like wearing a corset is very difficult to wear. You're constricting your chest cavity. You're not breathing the way you normally would. So it's physically damaging, or not damaging, physically draining is a better term.
Yeah, because when binding's done safely, it is not damaging.
It's not damaging. It's just, you don't get to take a deep breath that you would normally be able to. So it's important to rest and let your body move freely outside of that constraint. But just those little things. And it's not hard to do.
It's really not. Just listen to queer people.
Mm-hmm.
And
do your research.
Yeah, and do your research. Hire queer people. Pay them. Give them money.
Yeah.
And, be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, I don't know, like, if you have, like, 7 books of a series that details the romantic lives of straight teenagers, I'm pretty sure you can mention at least once a queer older man who suffered heartbreak. Just, like, throwing it out there. God, people are just gonna hate that I'm talking shit on Harry Potter. Yeah. Every time I do, someone gets mad, and it's like, look, like, you can look, I love garbage. Like, I can analyze to the end of time. All right.
But regardless, yeah, it's not super difficult, and it doesn't have to be this big production. People just want to see themselves in media, and it's not...
And not die.
And not die, and not be portrayed as a victim, not be portrayed as a villain, not be portrayed as these things all the time. So there just need to be more people, more characters, more representation, and then these issues will no longer be issues.
People.
Yeah, they can just be people. How are you doing on your sketch, Sydney?
I mean, we're about out of time, so I'm gonna call it as done as possible.
Tight. Looks pretty good. I love the tabby slime. Very cute.
I love tabby. I love the tabby slimes, and I wish they were more useful.
They are so not useful.
All right. But thank you for joining us on this episode of Drawntaneous.
Our rant.
Our rant of we're gay, we're queer, get used to it. But we will see you on the next episode of Drawntaneous.
See ya.